Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where we're on the Kingdom Behavior Indicators. And this is episode 5, the essence of authenticity. So, can you bring us into the world of authenticity for us, Kirk?
I'll do my best. Um, uh, First image that came to my mind is the mask that we all wear. The mask that we wear, that's who we think people need us to be, who we think we're supposed to be, the opposite of who we think we are. uh, I know growing up, I was taught by the actions of my family and teachers and people around me, almost without exception, that I didn't matter, what I needed didn't matter, what I thought didn't matter, what I felt didn't matter. Um, and if I ever insisted on being heard or seen, I was punished for that in some way. And I don't think that's uncommon. I think that's actually incredibly common. And we grow up knowing how we're supposed to behave. And just as importantly, we grow up knowing how we're not supposed to behave. And how we're not supposed to behave is to let people know what we really think and how we really feel, and what we agree with and what we don't agree with. And specifically, we're very clear, if we don't agree with something, we're supposed to keep our mouth shut. So we grow up without even knowing. Like, I didn't know I had a mask on my whole life until I interacted with my first transformational weekend, which was the Landmark Forum in 1996. And um, there's something that we talk a lot about here called the domestication. And in the domestication, from the time you're an infant, you're rewarded when you do something that pleases the people around you. You're punished when you do something that displeases the people around you. And that starts from being a toddler and an infant and a toddler and a young child, and go to school. And then again, there's certain behaviors that are acceptable, certain behaviors that are not. There's certain opinions that are acceptable and certain behaviors that are not. And we figure that out pretty quick. So for some of us, it's clunky. We, for some of us, we're certain that it must be important to actually, be honest and say what we think or say how we feel. And then we learn that it really doesn't work out. It just really doesn't work out. And then we have another conversation around here we refer to sometimes called the dream stealers. And the dream stealers are actually the people who love you that don't want you to follow your true path, your true calling. They don't want you to do anything that would be uncomfortable. They don't want you to do anything that would take you away from them. The dream stealers are your family and close friends. And again, to accommodate that, we turn ourselves into something that we're not. We become something that we're not. We create this whole facade, this whole character, um, through a couple of events in my childhood. I noticed that the world was really unsafe and dangerous, so I hardened my heart. I remember the moment when my mother was yelling at me, and I had an out of body experience, and came back into my body, and it was peaceful. That was counterfeit peace. It was the peace of disconnection and disassociation. And another time something happened, and I noticed that the only way I could get my mother's attention is by being interesting or charming or funny. And another incident happened, and I realized that I must be the best. I made up that I must be the best at something or whatever I'm doing in order to be accepted and to be safe and to move on in life, to accomplish anything. To really is just to survive. It actually wasn't moving on and accomplishing. It was actually way lower than that. It was actually like desperation of keeping a new job that I wanted to keep. And I realized, oh God, I have to be perfect. I have to be the best at everything. And so I went on through my whole life kind of having move, one, two, or three, door number one, door number two, or door number three. I could be tough, I could be funny, or I could be really good at something. And that's really, I just had those three moves. And if most people kind of look, I think that most people will find that there's three ways of being that they have that are predominantly how they interact with the world and how they interact with people. It's the sort of thing you might put on your resume, you know, it's how you accomplish something. It's your strategy for winning in life, but it's actually your strategy for surviving life. And so, I was unaware of this too, so that mask is both conscious and unconscious. It's conscious in, oh, I better not say that thing, or I'll get in trouble, or I'll get cast out, or I'll lose something, or I won't get something that I want. And then unconsciously, we don't even know who we are anymore. I mean, we don't, all these conversations are floating through my head. We don't know who we are because we never know. Somewhere along the way, for most of us very early, we stopped saying no when we wanted to say no. We said yes when we wanted to say no. Hey, do you believe this? Do you want to do that? Do you want to have this career? Do you want to, you know, yes, yes, yes. And then we convince ourselves that the yes is honest, but it's not. And so authenticity is the idea of taking off the mask, stepping outside of the character, stepping outside of fear, stepping outside of our strategies that we know will work, even though it's counterfeit, we know it'll work. We step out of those strategies to actually reveal our true location, our true feelings, our true thoughts, our true opinions and conclusions, our true beliefs. But that's incredibly difficult to do. Most people don't even know what is underneath all of that. And so the the last analogy perhaps I'll use in this little piece is the bullfighter, right? So the bullfighter is standing in an arena and there's a bull who would like to destroy the bullfighter. And the bullfighter taunts the bull with a red cape. And the bull rushes to the red cape. And just as the bull approaches the red cape, the bullfighter just elegantly steps aside and the bull gets the cape. And so the bull is the bullfighter is deliberately using the red cape to draw in the bull to this fake false reality that the bullfighter is in control of. So that would be inauthentic. Authenticity is taking that red cape and wrapping it around you so that the red cape reveals your true location. So that analogy breaks down rather quickly if you're the bullfighter. Now the bull's coming at you, right? But authenticity is the commitment to just simply tell the truth in the deepest sense, to find the truth within yourself. Who am I? What do I think? What do I believe? What what purpose do I have, or do I even have a purpose? Or what purpose would I love to have in life? Who would I love to be in life? How would I love to be able to relate to myself as a man of character, as a contribution, as a resource, somebody who's going to leave the world in better shape than they found it? Um, that may be the sort of thing that people want deep down under, but we're so beaten down through domestication and self-shaming and shaming coming from the outside that we don't even have a connection to that anymore. The last thing I'll say perhaps is intuitively we think that if we reveal ourselves, we'll be hurt, we'll be left out, we'll be cast out, we'll be somehow shunned. But what actually happens in a loving space, in an environment where people support authenticity, what actually happens is once you reveal the darkness, once you reveal how you really think about yourself or how you really hold the world, it actually makes people incredibly beautiful and magnetic because you actually get to behold an actual human being expressing either expressing who they are or expressing the desire to connect with who they really are. And it's incredibly beautiful and moving. So what actually happens is how you're received and perceived in the world actually elevates exponentially once you start being authentic. But it's really a very small eye of the needle that one must go through to let go of the fear and the shame of revealing oneself for the first time, or one of the first times, and have faith that it actually will work out, even though almost every example in your history proves otherwise. I'll pause there.
Um, so the question that's coming to me is, how did you start that journey? Like, once you had the revelation and the awareness of the mask and the performance, like, how did you step into authenticity?
Um, I uh, I was fortunate enough to meet someone at that landmark weekend that I was referred to, and we got close, and we really started having fun with it. Like we both found the power and joy of being authentic, and so I had a circle of people that we were all like discovering this. Wow, we could just be ourselves, and so it was really beautiful. Um, However, initially, for the first few years after my initial transformation, I was. We'll get 'em, baby. Use that. That'll be a fun little quirk in the podcast. Let's just call it that. well, actually, so here, that's perfect. So there's a beautiful example, right? So, in my past, in my domestication, this would have been a really bad thing. Imperfect. I should have thought about that ahead of time or work something out or whatever. Can you hear? Can you hear both of them? You can. Okay. Well,
But I
we'll
don't know
just.
if it, because I'm in your other
Oh,
house
okay.
seat,
All
so
right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I can hear
She'll
that.
she'll stop. No. The season has changed here, and there's things clattering on the roof, and she's certain it's like something coming to get us. So she's out there trying to keep the house safe. So it's all beautiful. So anyway, but there's a time in my life when I would have been embarrassed and shameful about that. And so that's the mask. Right? Everything's got to be perfect. Everything's got to be in order so that I can be okay, so that I can present a certain kind of image, the image that I need to project so that I can be okay and be respected and appreciated and whatever, right? So, but authentically, it's like, hey, there's my dog. She's doing what she's doing. I love her, and okay, all kind of included it. It's all beautiful. And I believe I might have been addressing a question with that. Oh, yeah. So, how did I maintain it, or how did I continue with it? It was up and down in my early years because I had a very small circle of friends who were in this with me, and I had a larger group of friends who were not. So over time, like the magic and the power and the joy sort of dissipated as I was interacting with parts of my community in the world who appreciated authenticity, who did, and that kind of stuff. And after a year or so, I got on on a leadership track, and then dove back in. And then I was always surrounded by people who are highly committed, practicing, and willing to support me or confront me or whatever with my authenticity. So, which points to something we say here a lot is, you got to get yourself a clean fish tank. You're the sum of the five people you hang around with the most. That can be very sobering. I'll just let people give a moment to kind of feel into that.
Mhm.
Think of the five people you spend the most time with, and just that's you. Anywho, um, so I was blessed. Well, I made choices, and I was blessed uh, for most of the year since that first weekend to be surrounded by people who had that same value of wanting to be and actually practicing being authentic.
Yeah. I've noticed this, even though in the village here, like, some people will claim their new identity that they
Yeah,
have, as
yeah,
a child of God and all these things, but then the performance will get just zip back up,
yeah,
and so how does one remember their identity and their true self and not get wrapped up in the stories
yeah. Uh,
or the old self?
that's an incredibly subtle question. That's a question we've been dealing with. That's a question I've been inside of really my whole career. Because the more experience I have and the more people I work with, really the wider it gets and the deeper it gets and the more nuanced it gets. And my current awareness is there are multiple obstacles. Some people are really, injured or hurt by their childhood. Like there's actual wounding that has occurred. People have had incredibly difficult psychological experiences as a child, emotional experiences, physical experiences, sexual assault, um, abandonment, just all, just everything and every mix of things. And the more people that I have the opportunity to really get to know deeply, that one of the biggest surprises for me is how this idea of a normal childhood really doesn't exist. Really, almost without exception, everybody I know has had just incredible trauma in their childhoods. So one obstacle is like healing, where there's like and pretty much all of us, there's a child locked in a cage inside of us. And um, you can have like this explosion of awareness. Wow, authenticity, that's amazing. But if you don't use that inspiration and energy and opportunity to keep healing yourself, it's very unstable. So that's one thing. The other thing is a lot of people don't really ever grow up. A lot of people in adult bodies are children in adult bodies, and sort of a very clear way to distinguish that. Like, what do you mean, or how can you tell? Well, children need to be cared for. Adults care for others. So for the people who need other people to speak to them a certain way, act a certain way, agree a certain way, think a certain way, feel a certain way, if you're needing the world to conform to you to be okay, you're still a child. So I'm certain I've just lost most of your audience there. And then some people tend to their healing and tend to their growth to an extent where they're full, whole, complete, and can overflow that into others, right? But absent that growing up, like when you're wounded as a child, you don't, your growth is, your development is thwarted, So there's the healing, there's the growth into like an actual adult. And then some of us take on like being a leader, just having an inspiration, desire to be a contribution to the world, to actually be of service, to live a life of service. And I would call that waking up. So there's, in my little world here, there's healing up, growing up, and waking up. And that's depending on where you're starting from. We all start at different places, depending on where you're starting from, that could be a real handful. um, and my journey's been really long and full of failures and embarrassments and regressions and falling off the wagons, so to speak, and all that sort of thing. So transformation is a messy business, and it's not this clean linear thing. Oh, you have this breakthrough, and boom, you're good to go. A lot of people will come to some of our programs, and I've been working on myself for 20 years, but those people are typically the most difficult to work with because they had a breakthrough 20 years ago, and they identified with that breakthrough. But for the last 20 years, they've been worshiping the breakthrough and not tending to the breakthrougher. It's like if a golden goose produced one golden egg and then you worship that golden egg forever, you're missing the fact that that golden goose could lay a new egg every day. So honor the creator inside of you rather than what you create. And there's whatever breakthrough or massive insight you have, and it opens up the world for you. That is amazing. Lean into that, enjoy that, appreciate that, and just know that there's no top to the mountain. There's always more to go. And there's a little riddle that I tell, that I ask, and it's like, why do mountain climbers climb mountains? And I get answers like, well, they want to get to the top. They, whatever, all kind of reasons. But the reason mountain climbers climb mountains is because they love climbing. And so to really get the most out of this kind of transformational work, what there is to do, in my estimation, is to create a love of climbing, There's no top of the mountain. There's no place to get to. That breakthrough you had 20 years ago is just a base camp way down at the bottom, and there's 100 base camps to go, or 1,000 base camps to go. And rather than looking at that, go, oh man, I can't do all that. Just love and enjoy getting to the second base camp as much as you love the first camp, and then love and enjoy the third base camp as much as you love the second one, and so forth and so on, and rinse and repeat, and create a love of a life of climbing. Create a love of a life of waking up, healing up, growing up, you know, letting yourself, um, letting yourself, uh, letting your awareness expand with these all these different worlds and language of which there's hundreds and thousands, and it's not a chore. Each one is this beautiful divine opportunity, and each base camp you go to, each new awareness, each new breakthrough is a whole new world. Enjoy that, love that, and just know that there's another and another. And the great news is once you love climbing, and there's no top of the mountain, that's actually great news. I love climbing, and I'll never have to stop. So yeah.
I've noticed on the journey on the climb that at certain base camps as well that there's I guess like an awareness of the struggle, the pain that you have to go through to get to the next one. And I've recognized like some people aren't gonna go on that journey with you. Some people are not gonna make it to the next one. And so how did you actually, and how can the people related to this go through that process of the struggle of losing people, of their attachments, all that kind of thing, while they're going on this journey?
Man, love and support, like get yourself surrounded by 5 people who can be committed that you fulfill what you're here for, that you even discover what you're here for, and that you jump on that train and let it rip, and that's rare. I lost everybody, when my first transformation, all those years ago, I lost everybody. That wasn't a big loss. I mean, that sounds terrible, but these were people who were wanted me to be small and domesticated and serve their comfort and that kind of stuff. And even in this last metamorphosis for me, 5 or 6 years ago when I met John and you know put my commitment to this mission and moved to Costa Rica and stuff. Nobody from my world who I love dearly has any interest in what I'm doing. Nobody has a question. We're just not in communication. We don't have anything to talk about. I'll say something like, "Oh man, this program we developed is the best thing I've ever seen." And meanwhile, we've been leading programs together for 20 years. And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." Like, if my best friend from back in the day called me one day and said, "Man, we've got the best thing I've ever seen," I'd be like, "Wow, tell me about it, brother. Let's hear it, man. Let me clear my schedule. Tell me, tell me, tell me." But it's just like there's just no interest. Like it's like less than no interest. Like changing the subject, and it hurt my feelings at first. I'm completely great with it now, but my experience is at every new awakening, I've lost everybody, and the people that I meet on the other side are people who are actually ready to receive who I have become and who I am becoming, and rejoice in my continuing to wake up and grow up and heal and expand my awareness and be more of a resource and more of a contribution. And I could not have done any of this alone. And as I've come to in the last few years, come to appreciate a relationship with God and a relationship with Jesus, it's now no longer like I did anything or specific people. It's like blessings come through people, and whatever talents and capacities I had at the starting line, or for some reason chose to develop, I now attribute to grace, and that's a blessing.
Yeah. I still struggle with that one at times, the pain, like of that,
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
received a message from my mother, and her pain about me not being there, or being
Yeah.
the person that they needed me to be for them,
Yeah.
rather than the path that God's led us on. It's a hard
Yes.
to even sit with the pain of my family and what they might be going through while I'm not in their
Yes.
life anymore. And
Yes.
I feel like I'm on the other side of it a little bit, to have compassion and more understanding. At first, I felt rejected. I felt like all these different things. And now I'm like, wow, I have so much compassion for what they might be going through, because they also lost a
Yeah.
daughter, a friend, a
Yes.
sister, and all those
Yes.
things. Um,
Yes.
it's Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do this without God, or the awarenesses that He's brought.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and divine timing. Like, I can honestly see, like, people just can't hear you, and that's not where they're meant to go. And, like, that's
Yeah.
okay, because God's got a plan for them too.
Yeah.
But
Actually, before you go on, a couple things came through
yeah,
for me there. One is something about pain. Um, pain. Pain happens. You hit your thumb with a hammer. Pain. Someone you love surprises you with a cruel statement or a harsh judgment. Ouch. And that happens. We're living in these animal bodies, and that's part of it. And suffering is optional. Go with the hammer analogy. You're on it. I used to be in construction. You're on a job site, you hit your thumb, and ouch. And you got two options. One is nurse it for a moment and get back to work. The other is you spend the next 3 days telling everybody about it. And the person who, you know, does whatever you got to do, wrap it up, put it away, whatever, put ice on whatever, do the thing, and then, get back to work. There's little or no suffering there. It hurts for a while, and after a while, it stops hurting, and it's about that significant. For some people, it's a whole movie. It's like a multi-series movie. You know, the story of the painful thumb, and then the story of the painful thumb 2, and the story of the painful thumb 3 and 4, and day 4 is like, dude, can we talk about something else? I don't care about your damn thumb anymore. Anyway, so that's a kind of a cute analogy, but I've seen people nurse a difficult event for decades.
yeah,
Did that event really fuck up your life, or did it fuck up your last decade? Did it really fuck up your decade, or did it kind of did it mess up a month? Did it really impact you for a month, or was it really more like a week? Was it really a week, or was it more like a day? Was it really a day, or was it more like 15 minutes? You know?
yeah,
So that's one thing. The resistance of the constant telling of the story is one way to continue to suffer. Resisting the thing, like I can, like, um, when you live in a world where this shouldn't be that way, well, you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer inside your judgment. So one way I deal with pain is I let it in and I experience it fully, and then I let it out. And I'm not saying it's like a magic formula or something, but what I am saying is pain happens. Just experience the pain. It's telling you something. Let the pain in, breathe it out, breathe it in, breathe it out. It's when you clamp down and try to wall it off, or clamp down and try to hang on to it. So you have a great story. Those are the people who suffer for a long time. And then the second thing that came up is we're actually not enough for our family, and we weren't designed to be, and our family is not enough for us, because they're not designed to be. But we're taught in Babylon, in the domestication of the world, we're taught that we're supposed to be enough for our family, and our family is supposed to be enough for us, which of course neither one of us are. And so that's recipe for constant suffering and judgment and pain and dysfunction, and a family, instead of celebrating their daughter, um, uh, finding a purpose in life, and creating a life that she really loves and can be proud of. It's just constant judgment, yeah, to whatever degree that it is. Um, there's something else came through, but that feels like a good place to stop.
Yeah. And so there's also what came through for me is that I can see things that I couldn't see before,
Yeah,
like where the world's headed and where people's decisions are and where that's leading and how to be authentic and okay with it. And
yeah,
so it even see that in the village, like, well, but I want my family to be here. I want them to come with. And yeah, but maybe that wasn't God's will. So how did you surrender the I guess how did you surrender into God's will versus what the way that we think that things ought to be?
right before that, you actually brought up the last thing that I couldn't remember is that
Yeah.
the people in our lives only have a chance if we do go first.
Hmm.
And as painful as that can be, and as painful that can be for others and for us, and as uncomfortable as that can be, and as against the rules as that is, it's against their domestication. It's not how you're supposed to think. It's not what you're supposed to do. And we surely will be and have been and will be judged further for that. But also, it's possible one day your family goes, "Wow, my daughter's never actually sounded healthier, never sounded better, never sounded more on purpose, and never more clear. Maybe, just maybe, I should go kind of investigate that and see what's going on." Which actually happens, right? But if you don't
Yeah.
step into the light, if you stay in the darkness or the lie or in Babylon, then no one gets out of life. Like, it's impossible. But if someone goes first, oftentimes someone will follow. And oftentimes, if one person follows, then it's really interesting to the rest of them. And what? And as people trickle out of the darkness into the light, oftentimes it's very attractive to those who've been resisting. Now, to your point, not everybody's going to go. Not everybody's going to. Not everybody's going to leave hell. Not everybody's going to leave their suffering. Not everybody's going to leave the illusion, the malaise of the world, the domestication of the world, and it's I no longer hold it like they should or they're supposed to, or that's the wrong decision. I barely know what my soul's path is. I for sure don't know what anybody else's is, for sure. And it's taken me a minute to really settle into that because I'm looking at somebody and they look like they're suffering massively. And it looks very clear to me what the source of their suffering is. And I love to offer assistance to people who would love to have it, but a lot of people just refuse and are just not interested, or lower response than that, aggressively attack at the offer of assistance or love, and I have learned over the years. I'm a recovering people pleaser, so that was initially very difficult for me. But I've learned over the years to let people be, let people find their own path, let people find their own journey, their own purpose in life. If what they want is something that I have, really, my whole purpose that I'm alive for is to give that away, whatever leadership skills and wisdom and ability to distinguish and be a contribution. I love giving that away, but not everybody wants it, and it's now clear to me that's not everybody's role. And so I've learned to sit down and be humble and offer my assistance where it's wanted and desired, and hang on to it where it's not, and save it for the next person. And that's been a real blessing for me to adopt that for myself.
Thank you for sharing that. I I'm reminded of, like, because I just went through a really big breakthrough on this, and I feel like God literally like took my judgment on myself off, for decisions that I've made. And I read the book of Ruth, and I also watched this movie. You can find it on YouTube. and her story just resonates so much with my journey, my life. She was a little girl who was sold off to the king of Moab, and she was being trained to be sacrificed. And then she had a blemish show up on her, and so they couldn't sacrifice her. So she ended up becoming one of the priestesses, but they still did these rituals, and she was basically bringing children up to be sacrificed to this false idol. And like you said, God comes through people. Well, this Judean man came up to her and started to speak to her about God, and she just got so attracted to the truth that was coming through him, and she just decided to follow. And when she did that, her essence and her way of being was just pure faith. She didn't know anything about this, nothing. She just decided and went on and like loved this woman, even in hostile situations. She went to Bethlehem and was ridiculed and punished for being a Moabite woman, but she was completely in her new identity. And this is what really, really got me was she was like, I can't show them fear, because if I showed them fear, then I would make them true about what they believe about me. And I believe more in my God than what I believe about who I used to be. And
Wow.
it blew my mind, it like popped me, because God comes after you because he remembers the little girl that was being offered up to being sacrificed. He doesn't remember all the things that were taught and domesticated and trained into her by these people on how to survive in that world that she was being grown up into. He sees her from her as a little girl, and he's coming for her. And it just reminded me so much of my story. I left so many people behind and so many things, but I'm like, you want to know what? I now have so much faith that he's doing the same thing for you if you decide and if you choose and if that's what he wants for you. And it's just that story now is rippled throughout history for people to wake up to that truth, that nothing you could ever do could ever get you away from his love. You're not shamed, you're not beaten up for that. And he loves you. And there was this angel that came down and spoke to Naomi, and she was praying about this, and it was her mother-in-law, Ruth's mother-in-law, and said to her that God sees everyone as holy. And I'm like, wow, to adopt that truth, like that hit my heart so much. I'm like, woo, give me some of that. And so it's just it's amazing when you can actually step into the truth and be fearless about that. Even though people are going to bring up your past, they're going to say all these things about who you once were, but to hold that truth, it brings a whole different thing. But I wanted to share that. And
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you.
yeah. And so what have you noticed with fruit that comes from authenticity? Like, what type of fruit does the authenticity produce?
Well, for me, I mean, I lived a life of being an angry workaholic and like not knowing what I really wanted, living a life of limited options, you know. And in my journey, I discovered that I wanted to be a leader. I discovered that I wanted to live a life of service. And over the years, it hasn't always been easy. When I'm in environments where you know authenticity is not celebrated or appreciated, it's been very difficult. In these last 5 or 6 years or so, we're creating this community and this village and this movement. And I guess that's really has been the richest reward for me. Um, um, I get to live a life of being respected and appreciated. I get to follow a purpose. I get to contribute. I get to be of service. Um, Um, it wouldn't have sounded like much in my early years. Like, okay, you're going to do what for how many years and get what? How much are you getting paid? Like, would have been my question, but I have a life of abundance that would not be possible in my old ways of being, and are natural and constantly expanding with these new ways of being. I have everything I want and more. Blessings keep showing up all the time in the form of community, in the form of capacities, in the form of new ways to contribute and be of service, new ways to be appreciated and respected. Um, I have everything. And I would have never imagined this would have been the path. I would have never imagined I would get to live this life. I never imagined I would get to live this life. Um, and yeah, I mean, for me, the life I get to live is the fruit of that one day many years ago, choosing to go to this crazy weekend that people told me about. It seemed crazier than I was, but there was just something about it that, oh, this doesn't make me look good, so it's perfect for authenticity. Um, I got invited to this introduction about the Landmark Forum. I didn't know anything about it, except the person who invited me to it was somebody that I knew to be someone who didn't listen and be totally self-absorbed and totally a drama queen and that kind of stuff. And but he invited himself over to dinner one night, which really surprised me. And then who he was completely unrecognizable. He was attentive, interested, connected, adult, and he would ask me questions that I somehow felt inspired to tell him the truth about, and he received it. Like I was like, okay, what? Like, I stop everything. What is going on? And then he told me about this thing, and like in a few days, you're gonna have like an evening, like an introduction about it. Like my thought was, here's the part that doesn't sound good. My thought was, well, if that could do, if this, whatever that he's talking about, do all this for him, just imagine what it could do for me. And so I
Hey,
went
that's how
just out of curiosity.
sometimes it works, God will make
Yeah.
you jealous sometimes, you know.
Yeah. And so I was just like curious. And the introduction was horrible. It was terrible. These people did not know what they were doing. Later, I went on to train people to do this. So I have like this dual perspective, like first, like shock, like, what's wrong with you people? And then later, as I was training people to, I saw where the dysfunction was. But anyway, but there was something about how they were communicating with each other and something about how they were being, something about their stand that really got my attention, because even though it was like clunky AF and they were pressuring me to borrow money, it was like really pressuring me to register. This is really dysfunctional in every possible direction. Yet there was something there that was unique, and that little sliver of uniqueness had my attention enough to like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And man, it blew my mind. That weekend blew my mind. And um, and I forgot what I got lost in my story, and I forgot what question I'm answering.
Uh, I don't remember
And it
either.
probably doesn't matter. Yeah, that's perfect. And so it is. Great story. Let's end that little thread on a great story.
Authenticity. There you
Yay! I authentically have no idea what question I was answering. There you go.
go.
Tie that puppy right around
But I'm
the.
sure I most definitely answered it. So,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
In the way that I did.
So how did you remain um raw and honest uh, without slipping into oversharing or self-indulgence? Because I've recognized that, like you get that, you're like, wow, I'm raw, I'm honest, I'm open, and look at the fruit that it actually produced. And then people get
Yeah,
addicted to that and tend to like overshare for the the hit kind of thing. So
that was not my thing. by grace. I grew up like very sensitive, so I've always been very sensitive to how communications land on people. So that was just something that I came out the gate with. So I didn't fall into that pitfall. But there's something else you're pointing to I want to talk about. What and I may be recrafting the question to say what I want to say, but but uh, what kept me going is I got myself on the hook. I got really inspired to be of service to people. And once I was being of service to people, then my transformation was no longer for me. It was for the people I was serving and leading leadership classrooms and seminars and that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, my transformation, once I got into leadership track, which was 2 or 3 or 4 years after my initial beginning, my transformation no longer was about me. And so my personality and my way of being is very easy for me to be rigorous for others. It's much easier for me to be rigorous for other people's welfare than it is for my own. And so that putting a bit in my mouth, getting the bit and the reins on, like, hey, this is, you're going to be leading to 100 people tomorrow night or next week or whatever it is. And that has always been the very sobering reality that has, to the degree that I have, kept myself true and straight and moving north and continue to develop myself. Because I really care about delivering what I promise, and I really care about delivering what people want and have asked for. Yeah, that's what I recommend. My recipe for uh, being someone who enjoys climbing and continues to climb for years and decades is get yourself on the hook for being of service to people that you actually care about. And that is really propelled me forward ever since, and still very much does today.
Yeah. I recognized on my journey that I went through this phase, like of telling the truth, when I see it, I'm going to say something, and like confront that, and I recognized a lot of little things that came through that. But so there's one thing is like telling the truth, so like, don't ask me nothing if you don't want that. But the
Yeah.
thing is that I was giving it to people who weren't asking for it, even though that it was
Yes.
showing up in my awareness. It's like, oh, like, well, if you're
Yeah.
around me, you're gonna get the truth, but
Yeah.
it's not warranted.
Yeah.
There's divine timing. Somebody's not ready for that awareness just yet. And
Yes.
so I've learned to take a step back from all of that and have people come to me rather than just shouting out all the things.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that, and with that is uh, when to actually say something when someone's going to hit the wall. Like,
Yeah.
there's like knowing when to hold them and when to fold them, and you can see someone that
Yes.
you love that's gonna go and do that. So there's like a balance between the two. How do you
Yeah.
discern when to
Well,
say something?
one thing I one thing I've learned over the years is people want to say yes in direct proportion to the freedom they experience to say no. So if you have wisdom you would like someone to receive, the first thing I think is really important is to let them know that they don't have to receive it. Hey, I've got something for you. Would you like to hear it? And now, unfortunately, that very quickly becomes a technique. Oh, I'm going to say the thing so then I can say the thing. And that doesn't work, right? So it's literally got to be, hey, I have something for you. Would you like to receive it? And it's literally stop moving, stop acting, stop the faces, stop the, selling them with the smile and like stop all that stuff, stop the selling and
Yeah.
and let people feel into whether or not they want to receive something from me. And is this the time they want to, because it could be yes, but not now. Or it could
Mhm.
be no, never, or it could be no for now, or yes in a little while, or just whatever. Or maybe I have more questions first. those are all completely valid responses. And most people in our business, coaches and leaders, I say shortcut that to everyone's detriment. People get really full of their own wisdom and their own knowledge and their track records and their experience. I'm definitely guilty of all this. I know what I'm talking about. And but it doesn't work. I mean, it gives you short-term results, but you're teaching people that their sovereignty doesn't matter. You're teaching people that your arrogance does matter, and you're teaching people to be chased around and to deflect and defend rather than notice that they could use some assistance and go and then come to the resource, right? It's kind of like if you break in a horse, if you start off really rough, when you're breaking in a horse, a wild horse, you're going to have to be rough with that horse forever because that's what they know. But if you're breaking in a horse and you're incredibly loving and gentle, you can then work with that horse for the rest of its life in an incredibly gentle and loving way. It's up to you, and same way it is with leaders and coaches. You can train your people that you're going to hunt them down and chase them down and force your wisdom down their throat, or you can train them that you're available, and should they come to you, they'll get tremendous wisdom and tremendous value. Now that's your responsibility to make sure that happens. My whole strategy is to be available, be inviting, be authentic, be an incredibly valuable resource. And when people do come to me, I make sure they get what they ask for, and it's extremely valuable to them. I always prefer to give more than I promise if that's available to me to do that. And then my whole strategy is if I keep providing incredibly valuable insights and wisdom and they really get the benefit from it, then they will surely come back when they want to or need to. And so I think that's incredibly important. I think it's incredibly underappreciated in our business.
Yeah. And there's this, let me connect with it. There's a space that you can hold for someone that they can find the truth within themselves with the
Yeah.
questions that you can ask. You know, with
Yes.
if they can see it, if you're just showing them where to look and having them see it, that is a whole other thing, you know,
I love that.
and
I love that.
yeah, they stay with that, you know, and so you could just be the presence of the truth and they'll receive that, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I've noticed that. And
Yeah. One of my favorite things when I'm leading is if someone has a question and they are really stopped or they think they have me stumped or something, you know. And oftentimes with just a few insightful questions, the whole thing clears up. So have you considered this? Have you looked at that? And all of a sudden, like, any other questions? No, I think I got it.
Mhm.
And then, like you say, it's theirs. When someone says it for themselves, it's real. When you say it for them, it's suspect. So if you can lead people to the river, lead people to the water, and they choose to drink it, then the whole thing was them, and it locks in a way that it rarely does if you keep trying to give people your wisdom.
Yeah, it's like allowing them to access the wisdom that's already
Yeah,
within them. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And that's a better thing to train people in anyway. That's already in there. Whatever people are looking for, it's already in there. It's just if there's any training to be done, it's how to access what's already in there. It's not about getting more knowledge or new techniques or new distinctions. It's about finding the truth of what's already in there and the power that's already in there, and casting off the. We start off with authenticity, casting off the mask and the domestication, so that people's true divine raw
mhm.
power can just be free. Yeah.
Yeah, because most people have fears of just being misunderstood or rejection or, you know, yeah, whatever it may be. But that's really just the fear that's
Yeah.
hiding underneath there. And so once that's like, hey, there's none to fear. It's okay. You
Quoting
know?
quoting the incredibly wise divine novel of Dune, fear is the mind killer, which is
Yeah.
hilarious.
It really is. I think that that's the number one thing is like if you could just be fearless, and that's not the absence of it. It's just that you're going to choose courage in the face of it, you know? And so,
Yeah.
yeah. What have you resisted being authentic uh the most of?
Things that other people will use to hurt themselves. Like if I've like given my position here, people will take my what I say pretty heavily, some like more more heavily than I would appreciate than I would prefer. So like if I have a judgment about somebody or something like that, I might not go to them with that. I might go to someone else or clean it up inside myself. Because if I say the thing, sometimes people will hang on to that for weeks or months and use it to do all kind of stuff. And so, I'm reluctant sometimes to share things that it's proven to me over and over again with time that people will use to send themselves to hell and separate themselves from the community and that kind of stuff. So if I can find a way to be authentic and deal with the lies of the illusion and restore, without giving people an opportunity to hurt themselves. Now, that might all be dysfunctional, but what do I resist? Yeah, that's, and I still sometimes say the thing and sometimes I don't. You said something earlier which I didn't address: when to hold them and when to fold them. When to confront and when to sit in peace. And um, people don't need to hear what I think about everything. People don't necessarily need to hear what I feel about everything. And I'm not hiding to protect myself. I'm sitting down sometimes and waiting for divine timing, or I'm sitting down and waiting to be asked, or I'm sitting down and waiting for one of the other many amazing leaders, including yourself here, to take that charge. So um, and all that. Again, there's no top of the mountain. This is not a perfect answer. I'm still in an exploratory. As the seasons come and go, and the people come and go, and the leadership team gets stronger, the game is different every day. The game is different every week, every month, every year. So the answer that I might have had 6 months ago is not the answer I have today, and the answer I have 6 months from now might not be the same answer. But as far as what I resist, I really dislike people using whatever I say or whatever I feel like, whether it's functional or dysfunctional, to send themselves to hell, or that kind of thing. So that'll give me pause. And I think it's appropriate at this point in my career and this point in the leadership development of the community for me to say less and carry the ball less and let other people, you know, grow and ascend and practice and start having the hard conversations and that kind of thing that I've been blessed to. I've been at the pointy tip of the spear for a long time, and there'll be a time here when it's not my time anymore. And so uh, so some of what I have my attention on is how to pass on the baton in a responsible way. You know?
How has that felt internally for you, with people who take themselves to hell and and also holding it in, like, like
Yeah.
not able to say the thing.
Uh, um, it all gets easier with time. Um, One thing is the team here is so robust. There's so much support for people. So I'm not, I'm never in the place where, oh, well, what are they going to do without me? Like those days, if they ever exist, are long gone. Which I'm very much appreciative of, right? And have been working on, since we started this thing. And then the holding it in, it doesn't holding it in has a flavor to it. That particular question. It often looks like sitting down, feeling again, thinking again, um, finding a higher perspective, maybe having a conversation with somebody that I believe can hear the dilemma that I'm wrestling with, or the thing that I'm considering. But what I find is, you know, this little joke we tell here around here a lot is, what more can I do? What more can I do? What more can I do? And the answer is like always a lot less. Try less. And
Yeah.
so I apply that. I can apply that to myself. I need to say this thing, or whatever. Like, no, no, no. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just something inside of me that needs to burn for a little bit, or needs to simmer down a little bit, or I haven't found the higher. I'm avoiding saying the highest perspective because again, I don't think there is a highest perspective, but there's certainly a higher perspective, right? So, I haven't found the higher perspective yet. If no one's drowning, no one's running out into the middle of traffic, whatever, it's usually the urgency is just an internal experience of wanting the discomfort to go away. There is no actually urgency. People are going with or going through. I need to say a thing. I need to say a thing. Well, no, maybe they need to experience that a little bit, or maybe they need to hear that from someone else, or whatever. It's like the more I sit down and the more I let things unfold, the more I see that I can actually sit down and let things unfold. So that's kind of the space that I'm in these days.
Yeah. And you brought up something for me. So the question is like, how do you discern between the vulnerability that transforms and the
Yeah.
vulnerability that distracts people?
Yes. Yes. Uh, Mostly, I think that's a great question. Um, Considering my quick answer for a moment. Um, so I guess my first answer is like there's just sort of a intuition about it anymore. I don't think I can put a strategy to it. Well, if these three things are happening or whatever, you know. Um, I think you can feel when the room is receptive, or you can feel when the person is receptive. You can feel if their ego is like really in a heightened, energetic, defensive, aggressive kind of stance. That's usually not that subtle, so that impacts my decision. Um, I just sometimes have an intuition, say the thing, say the thing, say the thing, or don't say the thing, don't say the thing. And it's not fear. It's just like there's just some sense that this is not the time or this is the time. And then as I've been uh, um, surrendering to a higher power, oftentimes there's a conscious asking, okay, what needs to be said here, and just settle in. And sometimes the answer is clear. Often it's not, but sometimes it's clear. No, wait, let it rip. And, you know, and then whatever happens, happens. But again, even the result that I would like to have isn't necessarily the divine result.
Yeah.
I would like people to receive and go, wow, thank you. I get it now. I'm free. Like, I love it when that happens.
Mhm.
But sometimes maybe that's not the thing. Maybe that's not the next step in someone's journey. Maybe the next step is to be triggered for a few days and then have that breakthrough. So I've always lived by the fruits. I watch the fruits and I watch the results, and I have navigated that way for many years, and I would say successfully. And now there's this new flavor in town called surrender. And like, who am I to say that was the result we're supposed to have? It's the result I would like to have, but maybe that's not the highest result at this moment. And so I don't really have a really, I don't have an awesome answer for that. Just kind of feeling into it and asking and listening to my intuition and observing what's happening around me and feeling where people are at and feeling where I'm at and making a decision, yes or no. Yeah.
I've got it's like a download almost right now, and it's like our true authentic self is a child of God, the image of God, right? And if our thoughts lead to our words, lead to our actions, and then results. And people right now, what I've noticed is that they're so identified with the behaviors versus the character. And so when we're coming in to confront the behavior, people are like, no, that's me. And I'm like, no, that's God coming in to refine you and purify you. That's
Yes.
in alignment with who you
Yes.
authentically and truly are. And so
Hmm.
how have you been able to gift that awareness to someone while they're going through that journey and that process of the shedding?
Well, to whatever degree I have, I sometimes have conversations kind of like what you just did, like, hey, I'd like to confront something that I see that I deem that I see that I see, it looks to me like it's dysfunctional. It looks like it's causing a lot of suffering. It might feel like I'm attacking you, but it's not you that I'm attacking. You, I'm attempting to set free from a cage that looks real clear to me. It could sting a little bit. It could be triggering. You might have an impulse to defend yourself or attack. But what I want to let you know is the thing I want to confront is your ego. That I want to confront what's not you. Do I have permission to proceed?
Yeah.
So that, um, that has, that's pretty powerful. And sometimes people say no, which I love, because the last thing I want to do is try to assist someone who doesn't want assisting, because how that's received over there is just getting beat on, you know. And I'm not here for that. That's not what I'm here for. So I really appreciate it when someone says no to my offer, because then I get to stop offering it, and I'm available for someone else, and that's yeah, it's good for me.
Well, that shows up as self-care, like when someone's being authentic in their no, hearing it, like it leaves the space for self-care.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And then another one is like the emotions. A lot of people are being driven by their emotions, how
yeah.
did you how did you surrender or like bow your emotions rather than using it as a compass?
The emotions. Well, I my strategies for surviving life was to harden my heart. And so the emotion that I was most driven by would be like anger, frustration, that kind of thing. And I still feel angry sometimes. And I still feel frustrated and impatient sometimes. What's dramatically different though is I'm clear it's not me, and I'm clear that, well, no, what I mean is, well, I do mean that. I mean that's not my highest self. I'm also clear that whatever I'm frustrated or angry about, it isn't them. They're just doing their thing, and there's something unhealed in me, or some way I haven't grown up, or some way I haven't woken up, that somebody's speaking a certain way, someone exhibiting a certain behavior. Um, that's really not anybody's problem. That's my opportunity or my challenge to confront. And so um, I, when I'm successful, I seek a higher perspective. I seek a lesson from the pain or suffering that I'm experiencing. And if I can get a lesson, an upgrade that is more valuable than the discomfort, then that's a good investment. I'll do that every day, all day, yeah, all week, every day, twice on Sundays. And so And then if I'm unsuccessful and I spew my pain on somebody or whatever, judgment, I'll, as soon as I'm notice that and I'm able to do that, I'll clean that up with somebody and, apologize and restore my integrity and create a new future with someone, So it's not a game of perfection, at least not for me. It's a game of uh, being willing to be willing to have a perspective of my anger or judgment that it's not real, it's not the truth, it's my thing to deal with. And there is a higher perspective from which I will be free and able to be in life the way I would like to be in life.
Yeah. I've also noticed, like, with uh certain Bible stories that I read, right? That God will use certain behaviors and emotions, but it's behind the intention is what actually is the most important thing. You got to know why you're doing it. He's going to use that, he can use all of those things. But if you got to come from the right space of why you're doing it and be aware and
Hmm.
conscious of that. So
Hmm.
on the outside, some people may like, no, 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 you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to, it's supposed to be all loving, all caring, all yes and thank you. No, it's God's going to use some
Yeah.
whips and knock down some tables for you, but it's where it's coming from. And so um yeah, I think that the awareness of that and being conscious and being awake to those things, but that comes with time, um
Practice.
yeah,
Time and practice.
practice, practice, practice. um do you have a prayer that you return to um when you're
Just a simple question. Help me see this from your perspective. Yeah.
wow,
Yeah. And
yeah,
sometimes that's really beautiful. Sometimes it feels like I don't get an answer, but sometimes it's like, oh, snap, I see it now. That's beautiful. And where I don't see a clear answer, I don't feel good about something, then I hold that like there's some reason that there's some reason why I have that, and that reason will may or be revealed in time. You know, whatever it is I'm feeling that I don't want to feel, I have learned to have faith that it's there for a reason. And I was made the way I was made, and I had the experience that I had, and I'm having faith that it's all for the right purpose. And my life has been an example of things that my later life has been an example of being the answer to something or being a resource for something that I never knew would come up. And this thing I did 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 40 years ago is like, oh, I finally get to put that lesson to use, or I finally get that, oh, I see now. Like my childhood just seemed gratuitously unpleasant. Like, why? Like, what did I do to deserve that? But it's actually the perfect foundation for the resource that I get to be today. So I'm grateful for the journey and the darkness and whatever, however it was I perceived it. But it's only in the last few years, it's like, oh, I
yeah,
see. And so where I haven't had the I see experience yet, I just have faith that is on the way. That there's some reason that I have this, you know, experience or feeling that I say I don't want.
yeah.
Yeah.
All things work for good for those who are called according to his purpose.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, what an amazing deep dive conversation on this. Yeah, that was that was amazing. And I thank you, Kirk, for your wisdom, for your walk, for your journey, everything that you've bring to the light. And I wouldn't want to do this with anybody but you guys, like, yeah, it's pretty incredible. So surround yourselves with people that can give you wise counsel, like that have eyes that want to hold the hand and walk home together, know where you're going. Um, learn how to be authentic. And so thank you, Kirk. Thank you for this space. And there is support for you on this journey. These worlds and language, I don't even know how many you put inside of this conversation, but there was a lot.
It
And
was a lot.
there was a lot of them. And these worlds of language, like you can deep dive into them during the Visionary Leadership Program. It happens every Tuesday night. And that link's going to be in the description box below, as well as some other resources for you guys on your journey. And
Including an awesome musical playlist that has many of these worlds of language baked in there. Awesome music, it's a lot of fun. Would you be sure to put that link
yes,
in the description? Yeah, thank
it's
you.
now a part
Bring it
of
back there.
the
Okay,
whole On Purpose podcast,
fabulous.
resource links for everyone. You can
I'm
tune
really
in.
excited about that.
I can't believe all the things that are pumping out of that, just so many beautiful songs. Like
I
we're gonna
know.
have a whole new playlist for our band
Nobody's
with
more surprised than me, let me tell you.
we're gonna be a what the fuck. We're gonna have all of our own songs now. We don't even need
Yep.
these covers anymore, even though
Yep.
they're a lot. Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks again, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on the On Purpose podcast.